My name's Thad Geiger, and we're here in Doniphan County, about 3 miles outside of Troy, Kansas, in the beautiful Luss Hills of Doniphan County. We're surrounded by the Missouri River on 3 sides, and good Lord blessed us with tremendously deep soils. He just made them extremely steep and highly erosive. So this is my 2nd year in the program. We started out originally as a water technology farm, and now we're part of the PACE program. But we've left a major portion of this 600 acres in pasture, and then we've spent the last 20 years building terraces, laying tiles, building ponds to try to preserve our soils. And now, in the last 5 to 10 years, we've added cover crops. We've no-tilled since I came here. Part of the no-till was for 2 reasons. One, obviously it was a tremendous soil saver. Also, for a young farmer, you could farm a lot of ground with just a tractor and a planter. You didn't need a lot of accompanying equipment. Spent my career running a small country bank and farming. I've been very blessed to be in a lot of roles besides just farmer, small town banker. I serve as vice chairman of the State Board of Agriculture. I've served on a number of local boards. Last summer I was appointed by Secretary Perdue and Ambassador Lighthizer to the Agricultural Trade Advisory Committee. He advises our president on all trade, and the committee I'm appointed to is one with livestock and animal trade. I was very lucky to be introduced to international trade. So in the last 10 or 15 years, I've visited many foreign countries representing Kansas and U.S. agriculture. You know, a lot of times, you know, I'll substitute the word agriculture for life sciences or for food and fiber industry and whatnot, because it really does start there. I mean, and oftentimes in my international travels, let's say that, you know, what we're doing we see as a little bit more of a noble cause, because if you look around the world, the countries that are well fed, that have food security, those countries are stable, they're peaceful, they're easier to negotiate with. So we feel that that agricultural trade is a huge part of being a good neighbor, a huge part of stabilization, and here in Kansas we can play a big part in that. As I've traveled around the world, especially I get into areas where there's such expansive lands, but they just kind of farmed until the fertility was gone in the soil. And saw those practices, and I knew what my grandfather had done in terms of crop rotations with the old rotation of oats and clover and then corn, what the universities are doing, and I thought, you know, maybe if we take what Grandpa did, we take all the technologies and the new things that are going on at the land-grant universities, we make a marriage of the old and new, then, you know, we'll leave something that's much better for my grandchildren. So I really didn't think we were doing cover crops so much as we were just trying to come up with alternative feed sources for a cow herd. What we have kind of landed upon a couple years ago is a four-year rotation of corn, and in that corn, a legume type cover crop. Follow it the 2nd year with corn, and then that 2nd year of corn, plant rye in the fall, plant green into the rye in the spring with soybeans, harvest the soybeans, and initially we're going to plant wheat, and then follow that wheat with a cover crop, multi-mixture type cover crop, graze it, and then start back over with corn the following year. What we've decided on is still maintain that 4-year rotation, substitute the wheat with a different type of small grain, whether it be oats, whether it be triticale, whether it be some combination of oats and Austrian pea. Use it as a forage base, and then come back in with the cover crop in the fall. We always need hay. We run a registered cow herd and sell breeding stock in about a 4-state area. So hay in the barn is like money in the bank. Cover crop comes with its own set of headaches. I mean, it's not just as simple as, you know, going out there and throwing in a crop and planting into it. So it has to be managed also. But it definitely, you can tell the difference in the tilth in your soil, in the amount of soil that you're saving and whatnot. So it's a big deal. It's a good deal. It's a much faster, at least that's been my experience, a much faster time in order to see the benefits with a cover crop. And just a simple cover crop such as cereal, rye after corn, and then planting soybeans into it. We see more weed suppression. With the cover crop, that soil temperature stays, you know, 10 to 20 degrees cooler, which helps, you know, the water retention for that crop. So there's big benefits there too. Field borders work really well for a lot of different reasons. All the years I was in the bank, we noticed that, you know, the fields around here usually are bordered by timber or ditches, and you have a lot of competition for the water, competition for nutrients from tree roots around there. So those first 12, 16, 24 rows of your crop just didn't do quite as well. So we started planting a lot of our fields to a field border of some type, usually a grass legume mixture. We actually saw our average yield go up You know, and the reason is it costs just as much for seed, just as much for herbicide, just as much for fertilizer to plant your very best soils as it does some of those soils around the edge of your field. So rather than just kind of break even with a corn or soybean crop, done this for several years, put those to some type of a forage crop. And it does several things. Obviously, there's an economic benefit, we feel, to that. I think that there's certain environmental benefits, because as your nutrients come off, whether nutrients or herbicides come off and go to your water system, they're being filtered somewhat. Obviously, as I alluded to earlier, there's a benefit. There's always need for a forage crop in a cow-calf operation, so we have that. We have roughly 140 head of registered Simmental and Sim-Angus cattle. We typically probably run sometimes more cows than we have acres, and one way to maintain our forage quantity and quality is through rotation. Now, and I'll be the first to tell you, we can get away with things in Donovan County that you can't get away with in central Kansas and western Kansas. We're blessed with so much rain, we're blessed with cool season grasses. Sometimes we can abuse our grasses and they'll jump right back. It's just part of the deal. But we have found that we can run about a cow-calf from the middle of May to October on about 2 acres of land here. And we have 7 pastures on this 400 acres on this side of the road, and we can keep the cows in there for anywhere from 3 to 7 days, and then as you rotate through, they'll have anywhere from 3 weeks to a little over a month to rest. And our pastures are typically fescue, brome, orchard grass, some timothy. A month of rest could mean a foot of growth. What we do a lot of in Donovan County is what we call push-up terraces, where we don't farm the backside. The backside of the terrace will have an extreme slope on it. Actually, what it does, though, it actually levels out the upper side. So you're farming ground that we level it out some. If you look across just to the east here, there's an example. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 of these terraces that go down a hillside with 30 to 50 foot of topsoil. These terraces all have underground tile outlets to them. Because our soils are so fragile up here, grass waterways just don't work very good. They just the water would carry to them, and we'd end up with small ephemeral ditches, or sometimes even ditches that were anywhere from 6 to 24 inches deep. So today we've replaced those waterways with underground tile outlets, which is it's a huge savings in soil, which is a huge issue today. In terms, it's great for water quality. As that water moves across your terrace, as it pools right there at your riser before it goes into the tile, your sediment from your soil will settle into that terrace. So you have a much cleaner product going down the underground tile outlet, which means cleaner water going into our streams here, eventually into the Missouri River, eventually to the Gulf of Mexico. Makes for a better environment, makes for better drinking water. It makes the life of our rivers and streams much longer because we're not putting sediment in there. And as expensive as this soil is, it keeps the dirt on our farms. So let me take my farmer hat off for a minute. I'll put my banker hat on. So one of the things I said when I first talked about this is, sustainability is a big word. It's a kind of an all-encompassing word, and it's a way overused word. But one of the main things in order to be sustainable is to sustain profit. If you can't be profitable in any business, it's going to be a short-lived. The real enhancement to what we're doing is to have livestock. Livestock really makes it work. We're seeing, just in the first few years of doing this, is that we really believe that after we get into this 5-7 years, that we're going to see a lot more soil activity. We're going to be able to reduce our inputs, especially on our phosphorus and on our potash. And when I mention cattle, there's a lot of ways to make money in a cow-calf operation. But a cow-calf operation typically is like a passbook savings account. It's a long-term investment. It doesn't have a huge net return, but after you've done it for a long time, all of a sudden you wake up and you say, my gosh, I've got a huge amount of equity here. Well, one of the ways to be really profitable and to try to exacerbate some of those profits in a cow-calf operation is to do it from the expense side. And there's so many freebies in a cover crop operation, whether it's grazing your rye, whether it's using some of these rye or triticale type cover crops for some additional forage, grazing your corn stalks. In our case, after the small grains, we'll plant a 8 to 10 cover crop mixture, and hopefully by Christmas time, we'll have cover crops that are taller than us, and then graze those cattle on that all winter long. The other thing is, for years we have 3 small lots here that we feed cattle in. It takes a lot of time to clean those lots and spread that manure. If we can use a ruminant animal to redistribute that forage, just naturally, whether it be a cover crop, whether it be a corn stalk or residue from another crop, it takes time for that to go through its half-life and go through carbonization and turn to nitrogen. One of the real ways to expedite that whole process is to run that material through a ruminant animal, and it returns back to the soil as manure or urine, but in a more readily form of phosphorus that's available to your next year's crop. So basically, that old cow is just doing a lot of our work for us, and we're feeding her in the process. So from an economic standpoint, that's every once in a while in agriculture you find something where 2 plus 2 can equal 5, and this is one of them. So yeah, we talk about some of the intrinsic values of agriculture, and one of them, we raise corn, we raise soybeans, wheat, cattle, pork, whatnot, but we always say that the best thing that one of the best things we raise here is our kids. It truly is. So my wife and I got married when we were 19. We bought our first farm when we were 20. Started having babies when we were 21. We've been blessed with 4 children, 11 grandkids, and we want them to have this someday.